Today we're going to continue in the narrative of Joseph in Genesis. We're picking up in chapter 41 at verse 41, reading through to the end of chapter 42. And what happens in the second half of Genesis 41 is Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dream successfully. Pharaoh is incredibly impressed and decides that this young man is the one who should be put in charge of preparing Egypt for what Joseph has foretold from Pharaoh's dream, that there will be 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. So Joseph's 30 years old. He enters the service of Pharaoh, and he's given all this authority, and he does a fabulous job. And our verses for the day come from chapter 41, verses 51 and 52. And this is when Joseph now is married, and he has 2 sons. It says, Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. The second he named Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my misfortunes. And so Manasseh means making to forget, and Ephraim means to be fruitful. And what I think is really significant is that in naming both of his sons, Joseph gives God all the credit. I mean, he is very honest with God. And he says, God has made me forget all my hardship. God has made me fruitful in the land of my misfortune. And I think for us, when you think about, especially if, like Joseph, you may feel like you've been in a long season of hardship or misfortune, is to remember, I've got to keep going. I've got to persevere. I'm going to talk about that more tomorrow. But Joseph, even through his years in prison, even through his disappointments, has continued to look to God as a refuge, as we began this week. And it was his faith and trust in God and his relationship that God had something more in store for him that kept him going through those long, dark months in prison before all these things changed and a whole new future opened up for him. The fact that he named his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, it's like every time he called one of his sons by name, he was reminding himself that God had made me forget all the hardship, that God had made me fruitful in the land of my misfortune. If you are in a time of hardship, if you feel like you're living in a land of misfortune, I pray with you so earnestly that God will bring about a change, as God did for Joseph, and that you will sense that you have not been abandoned, you have not been forgotten, that God is still with you.